The word why. What a curious word. The kind of word that can make us cringe, feel defensive, or even distant. But you know, sometimes why is the key that can unlock so much to our lives. Join me as we explore the why with fascinating contributors to the world, those that entertain us, inform us, teach us about life, and if we're lucky, inspire the next in all of us. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and welcome to Headroom, a production of Rainlight and co-produced by Old Soul. Let's go. Well, what a treat we have today. You know how I'm absolutely in love with story, and I feel as if with every day that passes and the older that I get, I want to really, dive into stories 24/7. And today is one of those days. We get a chance to learn from someone who's built iconic brands, but more importantly, has I think, an incredible story and a leadership style that was way ahead of his time. And it's something that we're going to get into all these areas that focus on really people and talent and engagement and doing the right thing, making the right choices, not just for yourself, but for others, and doing so in a way that can be profitable. I think for people's spirit, but for their pocketbooks, and just for consumers worldwide. So this is a real treat. We're going to be spending time today with Bob Stiller. He's founded Green Mountain Coffee Roasters Incorporated, serving as its chief executive officer and president from 81 to 2007, and he remained chairman of the board until 2014. With his leadership, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters became a multi-billion-dollar company, introducing the innovative Keurig machine, which I know so many of you have, which redefined coffee brewing and consumption. In 2009, Green Mountain was the number one performing stock of the decade on NASDAQ. Company was ranked number one in consecutive years on the list of 100 best corporate citizens by CRO magazine. And among many efforts, Green Mountain became the largest supplier of fair trade coffee in the world. Bob still continues to model a commitment to corporate responsibility, public service, and philanthropy through the Stiller Family Foundation. And he can add author to his list of credits. His brand new book is Better and Better, creating a culture of purpose, excellence, and transformative human engagement. You know, Bob, what I find fascinating is I have done the better part of 4,000 interviews in my life. And a lot of times I will say to people, look, it's like we're having a cup of coffee together. And I actually now get to have an interview and a discussion with somebody who really brought that to life for so many people. Because I'm of a generation where, coffee was not, it wasn't everywhere, right? It was more sort of just a part of, for some people, it was just brushing their teeth. It was a morning routine. But even if it was that, it wasn't something that there was an ambiance, there was an essence about a conversation, what it represented. And you and your colleagues and your work over the last few decades has really brought that to light. And I want to get to the book. I want to get to the growth of the company and the success, being one of only $2 billion companies out of Vermont, being Ben and Jerry's and yours. Let's go way back, if you don't mind, Bob. Take me into when you were a boy. Take me into the kitchen of your youth at home. What am I smelling? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? I want to get into your relationship with your father, Paul. Take me into what am I sensing if I'm in your boyhood kitchen?
Well, if you're in my kitchen, my father probably wasn't there. He was at work. He was from Germany and he jumped ship when he was 18 or 20 in New York and became, American success story. So he didn't believe in sports or whatever. And when I was 12, probably, I was working in a tool room. I could use all the machines, and I helped him in his business. He probably would get arrested today for child labor, but it was great at the time. And, um, it worked.
It worked. And there seems to be in the book, I was saying to you off air, I really genuinely enjoyed your story. I was surprised at so many different turns. I mean, we're talking about, we're going to get into gut decisions, instinct, friendship, seeing opportunity and knowing what to do with that. But the one thing, and I want to sort of piggyback off of talking about your father, there seemed to be a great reverence for him and the way in which he worked and the way in which he thought about working and the principles that really sort of undergirded his approach. Was he a superhero to you? I mean, talk about sort of how you thought about him, because you walked with a great deal of confidence professionally. That's the way in which I experienced you and your story in your book in the early 70s and what you were doing and seeing opportunity. What was it about your dad that gave you the confidence to sort of walk in a similar path?
Well, I guess there was the old work ethic that if you are persistent, you're going to be successful. But he had high ethical standards. He really felt in providing a quality product, taking care of your employees, you're going to be successful in whatever you do. And, I mean, he started from nothing and he sold his business in early 60s to uh, Teledyne. He made tubular heating elements for electric ranges, skillets, stoves, and stuff like that.
And so when you think about ethical practices, I mean, it makes me think about capitalism and what your idea of capitalism was early on, as a young person watching him grow his business, because you are generations ahead in thinking about how to engage the people that work and support and believe, and ride sort of co-pilot to the vision and mission of Green Mountain.
So, yeah, I mean, when I started Green Mountain, there was a number of years of survival, and we were motivated to do that. But after we started making money, it was like, well, why do we have to work so hard? Why do we need to make more money? And when we started getting into doing good things, and we started doing the 5% of our pre-tax to various causes, it then became the more money we make, the more good we can do in the world. And that was incredibly motivating to people. It wasn't, I didn't really set out like, I'm going to do this to motivate people. We sort of did it the
So
right thing.
you would say from a humble position, it was a bit of a happy accident, but one that you saw immediate dividends on.
Yeah, it was incredible. You know, we had a group that wanted to form an environmental committee. And I said, sure, that's, we believe in taking care of the environment. And then before I knew it, they were designing shipping boxes to reduce waste, cutting down energy use, and doing all these things that really helped profitability. But their motivation was to really save the planet, not make more money. So I think a lot of these initiatives really go hand in hand, and people I don't feel understand that from a social responsibility point of view.
Yeah, it's growing immensely now. Obviously, in 2024, we're seeing a lot of statistics around Gen Z and what they're looking for by future employers, why they stay, why they're engaged. Uh, Before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about being an entrepreneur, because I engage with a lot of entrepreneurs and those that are still young and in school, and sometimes when I speak at high schools, you know, they kind of want to understand the qualities that go into being an entrepreneur that maybe you can't teach. And there were a number of decisions that you had to make, right? I mean, you can talk a little bit about Easy Wider, right? And that first business, and when you knew it was time to separate from your co-founder. When Tell me about instinct, being an entrepreneur, and knowing also to your recent example just there about you had people who wanted to think about the environment, and all of a sudden that morphed into an incredible plan that was both profitable and purposeful. Where did instinct for you start to set in, where you could trust yourself, trust your gut? Because I think that's an area that goes unnoticed in a lot of entrepreneurial stories.
Well, I certainly feel I'm intuitive. I've really taken. I don't know if you're familiar with the Silva method, but it really teaches you how to use your intuitiveness. And I'm a meditator which also you relax. And, when you're in that relaxed state, you really come up with a lot of ideas. It's like, if you don't meditate, you might be taking a shower, driving a car, and then you get this aha moment. So I believe in that, those intuitive experiences, but generally I research and make sure it makes sense. I just don't like, I'm going to go do this. I'll think of something and then I'll research it. Does it make sense? Is this the right thing to do? I'll ask other people, and generally, if it's business related, I will try to share it with them so that we co create a strategy or a plan around it. So we're all in it together versus something I'm doing.
Did you feel confident early on? I mean, if we think about your relationship with your own self-worth and confidence, because a lot of see, what's interesting, Bob, is that when I was growing up, people didn't talk about being an entrepreneur. You might have had a parent or a neighbor that had sort of a shingle that they hung out, and maybe they sold insurance or they had a hardware store, but the term entrepreneur really wasn't proliferated, throughout I think, our society. And now every young person just assumes that they, in essence, have to be an entrepreneur, right? Or that they will be an entrepreneur. But I don't know if everybody's cut out for that, because you have to have a level of maybe blind confidence sometimes. Um, like, and we go back to the early 70s and you sort of move that forward to your last days as CEO of Green Mountain. How do we understand the arc of your own confidence?
Well, I guess I never, I always felt we'll find a way. It's you adjust your course as you go and figure it out. If something comes up, how can we, make it right? Um, yeah, I guess don't really think of myself as an entrepreneur. I mean, this business opportunity came up, let's say with Easy Rider, it made sense to have, do the two papers together. So we just went and figured it out and researched it and made it happen. With the coffee, I realized that generally speaking, when I started the business, great coffee wasn't readily available. It was such a better product than normal coffee. I knew if we provided this to other customers, it will catch on and it will be a very successful company. But I think one of the things that I learned over the years is so much of what you do in life is really about your personal skills that you have and you develop. And I would say, in that regard, we're all entrepreneurs of ourselves. And whatever we approach, we need to find solutions to be successful in, what that direction is.
Let's talk about passion for people. Um, if there really is something in this book that jumps out at you, it's your passion for the people that worked with you. And talk about the from tree to cup, because while there's a literal, I think, sort of experience of what that phrase means, from tree to cup, I get the sense that it means a lot more when you think about the people that have been a part of the Green Mountain story.
Yeah, that was our purpose that we really worked. We developed with, three or four people, and then we met with, 20 people and asked them how that resonated with them, what did it mean to them, and developed this purpose statement for the company, which was that we create the ultimate coffee experience in every life we touch, from tree to cup, transforming the way the world understands business. And we looked at, let's say, that supply chain from tree to cup to take out uh, any cost that wasn't necessary, or try to be as efficient cost wise so we could be offering the most value to the customer with a quality cup of coffee. But we also looked at it from the environmental footprint and the social footprint. I think those are all aspects of a business that you should uh, understand and will be much more successful if you develop and improve all those elements instead of only focusing on the financial aspect of a business.
You mentioned that there were about 3 or 4 of you that worked on that, and that ties into, that notion of co-creation. What's interesting about co-creation, Bob, is I think that sometimes people struggle in that because there's a lack of trust in the room, that if I'm going to share or be open with my ideas, or we're going to co-create something together, that I'm more concerned with who's going to get sort of lauded for the achievement as opposed to what our objective is collectively. But I do think it takes great leadership to create an environment where we can co-create together and understand that our value does not change at the individual level, and if anything, it gets enhanced. Was that a delicate balance for you to maintain so that people felt that they could be a part of it, that they could trust their colleagues at Green Mountain so that you could achieve something for the greater good?
Well, I think we always had a tendency to work together. I mean, I thought I'm pretty creative and I came up with a bunch of great ideas, but anytime I shared them and worked with others, they were improved on. And not only do you have a better solution, but they're motivated and engaged to make it successful because they're part of, you know, developing, those strategies and initiatives. If somebody just gives you something and it doesn't make sense, yeah, I'll do it. And if it's not working, I don't care. This is what they wanted me to do. Where if you've made something happen and it's not working, it's like, wait a minute, I got to figure this out. We got to be successful with this.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I appreciated this later on in the book. You talk about your board of directors, and I don't know if it really came across as regret, but I think you have been very reflective in the way in which you engaged with the board of directors as opposed to those that were working day to day with Green Mountain. What are the lessons that we can learn from sort of your experience in reflecting on the board of directors and what they were either exposed to or not? Because you had all these incredible sort of pools of engagement and summits and ways in which people could get together and be very creative and co-create. And you get the sense that you wish there would have been more participation, or that you would have activated that a little bit more with the board of directors. What can we learn from that?
Well, I would say in the early years, for quite, we did engage uh, the board of directors. They would come to our planning meetings. Some came to our appreciative inquiry summits. It was maybe in the middle to late 2000s when we were growing. I knew we would be uh, $1 billion company, and the thought was, let's get somebody in that has more $1 billion company experience. And we started bringing in uh, others to the board. And that's when I feel I didn't give them the experience of participating in some of these initiatives. It's one thing to tell somebody about something and discuss it, it's totally different when they experience it firsthand. You really don't know something till you really experience it. And a lot of people think they do. And then something happens and, yeah, oh, I got it. You know, I
Yeah.
always get a kick of, you see somebody might write a book on parenting and they've never had any kids, or, you know,
So
I don't.
yeah, you have the experience, is invaluable. What I would be very curious as to your perspective now, when we live in a world of corporate social responsibility, of sustainability practices and monitoring. We look at ESG. What is it? What is it like for someone like yourself, who really you deployed a lot of this as a group, way before we had the acronyms that either keep people in check or motivate them depending upon their mission and vision for their own organization.
Well, I think there's a misconception for me on social responsibility that people are, you know, in addition to making their product, they are going off and doing good in the world, and that's more expensive. Where I think everything we did in the social responsibility area was within our supply chain. I mean, one of the big things is taking care of your people in social responsibility, right? We would let people volunteer an hour a week, or they can build that up. All the research will show anybody that volunteers really feels good about themselves. It inspires them. They become better workers. We used to donate coffee to a lot of nonprofits, which was giving money to these nonprofits in a sense with merchandise. But at the end of the day, that's advertising, it's sampling our product. They're going to get used to our product and go buy it. But then on top of that, they like that we support them. So it's advertising. And so many of these things really make business sense. It's a more effective business model. It's not an afterthought.
Yeah, that's a key point. I think that it's not an afterthought because you will see that in the market. There are those that I think they are approaching it from the position of compliance and fear, and sort of battening down the hatches. And then I find other companies and organizations around the world that absolutely embrace it as an opportunity to engage their workforce, to think of their talent in a different way. And I think they're reaping the benefits. I want to talk about the notion of better and better. Where did that, we'll get to the blueprint, but give me sort of the origin story of better and better.
Well, I came across that when I took the Silva course in, I guess, the mid 70s. Jose Silva had that as a affirmation, but then in researching it, it came from Emile Coué, who was a French physician in the early 1900s. And he gave a number of affirmations to people to heal and to improve their lives. And he was very well known, and people, came to him from many areas. And it's interesting because I've always believed affirmations uh, keep you focused and can help you do a number of things. But now there's been a lot of research on them, and they are indeed very effective methodology to, engage people or initiate change. It's all, part of that, uh, positive thinking and approach is a lot more effective.
And through the better and better, obviously the title of the book, you have seven principles. Can you sort of give the audience the rundown of really I guess the ingredients of your better and better that you've got into sort of seven buckets?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't have that when I was doing the business. I wish I did. But in looking back at our success and the engagement and energy of the organization, we thought, what are those elements that really made us successful? And, we were always in a sort of continuous improvement mode. So, we always sort of were looking for opportunities to improve things and provide better value to our customers and consumers. We talked a little bit about co-creation. That was another one. And, I would again go out of my way to make sure it was being, initiatives and strategies were being done by a group so they felt bought in and part of that. Uh, the third one was pursuing a higher purpose, which again realized when people were volunteering, doing good things, they were really inspired and so much more engaged in the business and the business success.
And then,
Um,
and I know that I think midway through you had value to all stakeholders. And what I found fascinating was that you named as a stakeholder the natural environment. And that's not something that I've heard before. Um, do you remember when that came about and sort of the response that people had in the room? Because I think thinking about the natural environment, I mean, that's the canvas with which you painted, right? If you think about it. Um, it seems really key, yet it sounds also something very pithy in a book, that, it's the natural environment, but I get the sense that it really did have a deep meaning for you.
well, taking care of the environment was a passion of the employees. They started the environmental committee, and um, I don't know, let's say sold the burlap bags that we were throwing away out so they didn't have to go into the landfill. But the growing community, the coffee farms and stuff might have had issues with water and uh, environmental issues that we also helped with that helped create a better coffee crop for them. And we loved helping them, but they also loved that we cared. And I know it motivated them. We gave them, t-shirts and hats and other things which they proudly wore because they appreciated us helping them, produce a better product. They knew where their product was going, which was a lot more meaningful than just working and having no idea where their work was uh, resulting.
Headroom is produced by Old Soul, a one stop marketing agency that understands the power of brand and nuance. Reach out to my guy Matt at Old Soul and supercharge your brand and content strategy. That's Old Soul. Shoot Matt a note at aoldsoul.com. That's AOLDSOUL.com. And now, back to our guest. I love it. It's like in psychology, you'll have the empty chair sort of approach where you can talk to the empty chair and whoever that might be, so you can communicate. And yet, sort of that natural environment was a bit like the empty chair. It sounds like in a number of ways in which the business was being operated. So then you went down from the stakeholder element and talk about mindfulness and well-being. I know that was one of the principles.
Well, it was just, yeah, part of the employee development uh, package. Let's say, we did a lot of training with uh, David Allen, who can use, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but gives you a system to organize your life, what you want to do, how you do things. And we used to teach meditation uh, to those interested. We had, uh, you know, group learnings where we would have what they call after action reviews so that when we finished the project, we would look back on how we could have done it better. So we always tried to instill in people's a mindfulness or awareness of what they are doing and how it works and the consequences of what works. When do they feel great about themselves?
It sounds
And
also like you're saying, Bob, it's like, what impact am I having on what we're trying to accomplish? And that seems to be the inverse of that, is what a lot of people feel sadly in corporate America, which is that they don't know that there's any consequence to their efforts. And I'm hearing the opposite of that, which was you were giving them an environment as a leadership group to experience their own impact on the collective.
yes, absolutely. Gave them a lot more meaning being aware of that impact, but it's also a personal awareness. You know, what works, for you. When are you most motivated? When are you happiest, enjoying your day? It's just an overall awareness of what's going on.
And then I know you close it out with really sharing positive experiences. So I guess focusing on the positives.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, we always tried to do what works. I mean, when we were focusing on, let's say, customer service, we would ask people, if you reflect back over your life, when have you had great customer service? Who gave you that service experience and why was it so good? What made it so special? What are the elements of it? And you then get in, well, how can we do that and provide that for others?
Did you ever feel pressure, Bob? Because you obviously you were growing as a company. I won't go too much into it, but I just love even the way you found Green Mountain, and the couple that had started that right out of the gate, and your experiences, and then even the way in which that transaction happened. It said a lot. I think a lot about you. Was there pressure because as you were growing, and yes, there were of course natural, I think, challenging times in the beginning, but as you were seeing success, as you were sort of, number one in different categories, and okay, we're on our path to being $1 billion company. How are you internally handling that? Is it stressful? Do you feel like that was just something that you were built for? How did it impact you and I guess your social life, your family, as you were building?
Well, I think if you spoke to my wife, she would say I wasn't around the home as much as she would have liked. Uh, I don't know if I would say it was stress. I mean, you need to get certain things done. You focus on improving the processes. Um, yeah, I don't know. It stresses an easy, a different word, sort of. Um,
I don't get that. You didn't. It doesn't sound, even from my experience today with you, that you seem to be pretty even keeled. So that it maybe that were there a series of highs and lows, or were you able to moderate that in a way that was just healthy for you as a leader?
well, certainly there was, you're anxious about various things that you're doing. Certainly when we acquired Keurig, it was a bidding process and it went to the highest bidder, and we didn't know who the other bidders are or how they would value the company. So I was certainly concerned. Maybe that was stressful, but I think I felt we would it would work out, and it did. I think underlying a lot of things, there is a uh, intention, let's say, of it's going to work somehow. And I tried to be relaxed and know that it would work. And I believe sometimes when there's too much desire for something, it doesn't manifest as quickly as you would like. And then you sort of let that desire go and it happens. So I try not to be too swept up in trying to force something. I have an approach that more that things will work out, and what happens is maybe a lesson or a learning experience for me in my pathway.
Let's talk about being a dad yourself, um, to three children. What was the impact of? Tell me about sort of building a business and being a parent, and then seeing them grow up, and whether or not there's a sense of responsibility to support them in a world where they may feel pressure to be as successful as dad.
Well, certainly I have supported them. I think they are all great kids doing great things. And have certainly talked about that pressure and sort of taking away some of the challenges of building a career or driving yourself to be successful. They have a stronger base on which to start. And a lot of people find a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment in, doing it all themselves. But they're happy where they are, and they're all very conscientious, doing good things in the world, and I'm very proud of them.
To that end, let's talk a little bit about succession and transitioning. Um, you talk in the book about what it was like in figuring out sort of that transition for you from CEO to chairman, and then seeing the sale of what, 2.5 years um, after you left, the day to day. And I'm just curious, we're now looking back, what did we learn from succession planning? That's typically one area that seems to be both sensitive, and if there's ever an area of regret from CEOs or those that have founded companies, it's in the way in which they approach the transition. Because I think it is innately difficult when you think about something that you've built from the ground up, and then handing the keys to another party.
Yes, I guess my transition was maybe not as formal and thought through as it should have been. I was very naive at the time, I believe. I was actually hiring this gentleman to be on the board because he had some billion-dollar experience. And through the interview process, I thought, gee, this guy could run the company. And wouldn't that be great? I was a little burnt out, and I thought we would run the company together, let's say a little more, where he came in and he really wanted to make his own mark. He often referred to the transition as me handing him a real high performance sports car. He appreciated the company's ability to execute, but he was a little more tops down in hindsight, which can work in many organizations, perhaps, but we were used to more of that engaged culture, which he wasn't as familiar with. So I would say over, time, that sports car wasn't maintained and developed as best it could be. And eventually, I feel we lost our way a little. But, uh, I think in hindsight, I would have worked with the board and others in the organization to understand really what made the organization successful. What kind of culture should we have? What kind of leadership, should there be? What are our strategies and how are those developed? And understanding that, communicate that to the CEO coming in, that these are expectations of how we wanted him to work with the employees, run the business, and carry on. If there was maybe areas that we needed to improve, we would maybe challenge him. These are areas that we haven't performed well in. Maybe we can do something different. But there wasn't any of that work or preparation to the uh, to me bringing him in. It was just a little impulsive. I know some of my board members were a little surprised that I came along and said, "Hey, I want to hire this guy as the CEO," but they respected what I was doing, and maybe they shouldn't have. But it all worked out, though. I mean, certainly, we did very well for many years, and it was a great organization.
Well, and that's what I love about the book and the timing of the book, because I would um, I would guess that if you had had this book back when you were thinking about that transition, when you were feeling a bit burned out, it might have given you some valuable information or ways in which to think about holistically a transition or a succession. Let's close with this, Bob. I think people who write, there is an intimate experience with their mind and the keyboard or the pen and paper that they use to get their thoughts out. Was this cathartic to write a book? Um, was it exciting? Was it something that brought up memories that you hadn't really thought about, but you were welcoming back into your conscience? Tell me a little bit about the experience of writing the book at this stage in your life.
Yes, it brought back a lot of great experiences that we had, a lot of wonderful memories, and a eagerness to really share them with others. I know a lot of, well, all of the items listed, let's say in the blueprint, are well researched. Anybody knows the importance of engagement and how to motivate people and grow them. But having a story, I think, conveys how it all came together much more strongly than a bunch of research and facts. So I know, like you mentioned, that the book has been inspirational to many people. I always loved and reading stories like this because I always picked things up that were helpful for me in whatever I was doing. So it's like working with others, when you grab a book, it's like co-creating something with the author. And I certainly love, reading different books that have given me many insights.
Well, I have greatly appreciated this conversation. You are absolutely a man ahead of your time. And I think it speaks volumes that you were willing to sit down and lay out, in retrospect, the experiences, the lessons, the humility, or with humility, the growth of a great American story that started off in watching your father, Paul, and the way in which he built his company and thinking about customers, thinking about experience. And I think that you've brought that in spades. It's been a great pleasure to spend some time with author Bob Stiller. See, that's got a nice ring to it, Bob.
Thank you so much.
Bob's new book is Better and Better, Creating a Culture of Purpose, Excellence, and Transformative Human Engagement. Thanks for taking the plunge into Headroom, where we uncover the why behind the what and who impacting our lives. Headroom is a production of Rainlight and co-produced by our friends at Old Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and this is Headroom.